So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Western Planning Committee of BCP Council. Before we proceed any further, I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer to read out the housekeeping notices.
Thank you. Please note this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this lies with the Chair. For those in the room, please note if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of the building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum. Mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning down volume completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holyoake. Do we have any apologies for this meeting?
We have apologies from Councillor Brian Hitchcock and Councillor Peter Sidaway, and substitute members, Councillor Matt Gillett is substituting for Councillor Sidaway today.
Thank you very much. So I'll ask everybody present to introduce themselves and their role this morning. My name is Marion Lepedvin. I'm Councillor for Newtown and Heatherlands Ward, and I'm Chair of Western Planning Committee.
Councillor Joe Clements, Penhill Ward, Vice Chair.
John Challoner, Ward Councillor, Camford Cliffs.
Cameron Adams, Councillor for Kinsale. Adrian Chapman-Law, Councillor for Alderney and Bourne Valley.
Michelle Dower, Councillor for Kensington.
Peter Cooper, Councillor for Hamworthy.
Simon McCormack, Councillor for Burton and Grange.
Matt Gillett, Councillor for Talbot Woods.
Kate Salmon, Councillor for Moordown.
Simon Gould, Development Management Manager.
Robert Firth, Senior Solicitor.
Monica Kwiatkowska, DM Team Leader, Western Team.
And Stephen Llewellyn, also DM Team Leader for the Western Team.
Various officers will also be with us on screen, either presenting cases or answering from an expert point of view on things like could be transportation, that sort of thing, if necessary. So we move on to any declarations of interests that members may have. Councillor Gillett.
I've got a conflict of interest on the third item. Quite a few family members are members of the club at Merritt Park. I myself have discovered that belonging to 3 different gyms doesn't actually help your fitness, so I've culled my membership there. But my family members are.
So do you intend to take part in the discussion and decision or not?
I should step back from the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify. So after we've had the officer presentations, we'll hear any public speakers, followed by any ward councillors who wish to speak. Can we also look at the minutes from the last meeting a month ago on the 12th of September? Are you all happy that we accept those as an accurate record of our deliberations and its decisions? I can see lots of heads nodding, so I take that as a yes. Thank you very much. I'll sign those in due course. So the first item for consideration is number 49 Foxholes Road. Since the agenda was published and even the addendum, there have been various developments, various updates.
I'm going to go and sit over there. It's quite all right.
I don't know what that was. So I'll hand over to Steve Llewellyn, who will outline what's involved, and bear in mind that what he says may lead us to decide to defer the application.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So members, the situation on this application has moved on since the agenda report was published, and also subsequently since the addendum sheet was published yesterday. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background of what those changes have been, and then you will be able to obviously make an informed decision as to how you wish to proceed with this particular application. So just as background, the issue at the centre of the changes, it centres around the potential impact of the proposed development on bats. So an important issue for you to be considering. Just as background, a phase 1 bat survey report was submitted in support of the application that identified that the existing bungalow is proposed to be demolished as part of the proposed development had moderate bat roosting potential due to a number of gaps in the hanging tiles on the property. As a result, that report recommended that 2 dusk emergence and re-entry surveys be undertaken to determine the number and species of any bat and the type of roost present. Those dusk emergence and re-entry surveys have been carried out and have concluded that the existing bungalow holds day roosts for common pippastraw bats. As the planning committee will be aware, all bats and bat roosts are protected by law, and it is an offence to harm or disturb bats or damage or destroy a bat roost without a licence. In this instance, the proposed development would lead to the destruction and permanent loss of the existing day roosts, and therefore the developer will require a bat mitigation licence, or otherwise referred to as a European Protected Species licence, from Natural England in order to undertake any works if approved lawfully. Government guidance relating to how local planning authorities should assess a planning application where there are bats on or near a proposed development site states 2 things. Before granting planning permission, the local planning authority must make sure that any mitigation or compensation conditions that are proposed to be imposed on a decision do not conflict with the requirements of a bat mitigation licence. And secondly, it must be confident that Natural England will issue such a licence. So whilst the phase 2 bat survey report has been received that provides details of bat mitigation, at the time of having to publish the addendum sheet yesterday, we were not in a position as officers to be able to conclude that those 2 requirements could be met. And a decision was therefore taken to change the recommendation before you on the addendum sheet to ask that you consider deferral of the application. That situation has again subsequently changed. So following the publication of the addendum sheet, it has now been possible to secure a consultation response from the Council's Biodiversity Officer, which in summary advises that the avoidance, mitigation and compensation measures as set out in the phase 2 bat survey report are acceptable, and based on those proposed measures, it's likely that Natural England would grant a bat licence for the proposed development. In light of that, it is now considered that the planning committee could consider this application should you be minded to do so. However, I need to give you some warnings about if you wanted to proceed. So firstly, I need to highlight that members, you've not had the opportunity to view that phase 2 bat survey report. It's been in the process of being uploaded to the council's website, and therefore members of the public equally have not had that opportunity to view that report. Secondly, if the planning committee decide to determine this application today, there are a large number of amendments to conditions and some additional proposed conditions that have not been presented to you before now. These can be made available to you in hard copy if you wish to proceed with this application, so you've got an opportunity to see those. Thirdly, there is also the possibility that persons intending to speak on this application may not be in attendance, having been told of the possibility of the application potentially being deferred. So finally, if the planning committee do decide to continue to consider and determine this application, then it is suggested that we will need to further amend the recommendation that's been set before you. And I can read that proposed recommendation to you, so you've got that before you make any further decision. So we would now propose, if you do consider this application, that the recommendation would be to approve, subject to the completion of a unilateral undertaking to secure the necessary SAMS mitigation and the conditions that are identified in the report as far as they remain untouched, and then the amended conditions, which, as I say, can be presented to you, and the additional conditions, and that the decision would be to delegate the final decision back to the head of planning to be satisfied with the position regarding habitats, having particular regards to the further information received and any further comments that might be received by Natural England or the council's biodiversity officer in relation to that information. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Llewellyn. In view of that, I'm happy to propose from the chair that we defer this application. Obviously, I'm open to comments and questions, but that is my feeling, that it'll be safer. We'll have more information. The public will have more information. We'll know exactly what we're talking about. That I think it is safer to defer it for the next meeting. And I'm getting hands up. Is this to speak or to vote? Right. Well, the first hand I saw, I think, was actually Councillor Salmon. So
sorry, I don't want to, only just in support of what you've just said, I agree entirely. Actually, I'm just going to mention that in a previous life, I used to write the Natural England statutory advice for people who found bat roosts when they were doing building work. So I know how tight the law is on this. I would not want us to be doing anything without having gone through the proper process.
Thank you. Thank you. So do I take that as a seconding? Yeah, well, I've been asked Councillor Salmon, not everybody else. So I'm not sensing any dissent. So can we take a formal vote? Those who agree that we should defer this for a future meeting, will you vote in favour now, please? Right, so that's unanimous. So that item is deferred. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll move on to the next item in due course. Just give a chance for those who are leaving us to leave. And we'll be moving on to item 6B, land south of the A35 Upton Road at Creekmoor. And we already have the presenting officer on screen, I'm glad to see, and that is Babatunde Arubazola, having murdered his name. I hope he will not forgive me when he does his presentation.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Babatunde Arubazola. I'll be presenting the application under the planning reference number APP/24/00641/F. Just before I proceed with my presentation, I would like to set the record straight on some minor errors within the planning committee report that you have in front of you today. On paragraph 34, which relates to representation, concern the site notice was posted outside the site on 23rd of August 2024 with an expiry date should be 17th of September, not August 2024. Secondly, an objection was received against the scheme, which was not recorded in the report. The objector raised issues around the site allocation of the application site. The objector states that the site was supposedly evaluated as part of the BCP draft local plan as a potential gypsy and traveler site. I'm just reading out the comment made by the objector now. In BCP site assessment, they stated that the usable envelope of the site outside of the predicted floodplain was too small to accommodate the GTS pitch requirement. No part of the site is at risk of flooding. The part of the site outside the area at risk of flood is too small to accommodate needs. Site to be reviewed for its role in the transport strategy as part of the local plan, as part of the emerging local plan. No evidence has been provided by BCP to support this statement. Looking on Google Maps and using the measuring tool, the existing Mani Heath traveler site will fit into the developable area of this site. This site was excluded from the DLP on this basis, and this oversight needs to be raised to the planning inspector. as the case officer of this application, my response is that currently the new Imagine local plan has not allocated this site for gypsy site or any other use apart from its use to be for transportation, park and ride. Therefore, I would like to move to my presentation. The application before us is located at the land south of 835 Upton Road, Creekmore, and the proposal is for change of use for a new temporary indoor padel center building for 3 years. Sorry, I do apologize. Now I'd like to move to the presentation.
Yeah, we can see
now.
that very clearly. We can see that on screen, so thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, the application is located at the land south of 835 Upton Road, Creekmore, Pool. And the proposal is for change of use for a new temporary indoor paddle center building for 3 years with associated infrastructures and parking space. I'll move to the next slide. As you can see on our screen today, the application development proposed will be located towards the western part of the existing Creekmore Park and Ride. I will see where my cursor is. That's where the proposed development will be sited. And as you can see on the left-hand side, the parking space design layout on the side, and the proposed building will be located at this point. I'd like to, the next slide shows a photograph of the site. This is the point looking at it from the western point of the site. It shows the entrance of the site. The next slide shows the area view of the site in its current state. The current state has standing tarmac area with parking allocated on the site. Just for us to get where we are, this is the small roundabout towards the western side of Upton Park, showing the entrance of the site and the road along Upton Park. The next slide shows us the existing hedgerows along the perimeters of the site. Then I'll just move quickly to the existing site description of the site. The application site, as stated, is located on a narrow edge triangle land between Upton Road and A350 Upton Bypass. The site is currently known as Creekmore Park and Ride. It comprises 2 adjacent land areas of tarmac outstanding with 2 access roads. There's one access located towards the northeastern part of the site, and there's one towards the western part of the site. The outstanding areas are laid out with parking spaces and punctuated by small rectangles of soft landscaping. There's a small soft landscaping there, and the application site is located towards the northwestern end of the site. The development will take place on this side of the site. The Creekmore Park and Ride was originally built around 2023, but has seen very limited use for that purpose. It has been used for various other temporary uses over the years and was last used as regional COVID-19 testing facility between 2020 and 2022. Since then, the site has been vacant and unused. The current lawful use of the site is for parking, known as Creekmore Park and Ride, which is currently vacant, as said, and there is a future plan to use the site for park and ride operation to Pool Town Center as part of the package of measures to reduce traffic on the local road network. I'll move to the next slide. The proposed development before us today is seeking a 3-year temporary planning permission to change the use of the land of the park and ride to station a temporary building on the site, which will form a dedicated indoor paddle center. The building will house 7 indoor paddle courts as well as auxiliary changing rooms, reception, shop, and a small cafe bar on the mezzanine level with associated car parking spaces. The next slide, which just shows the proposed floor plan, shows the auxiliary infrastructures that have been proposed as part of this development. That's within the ground floor area. The next slide shows us the mezzanine floor level within the building envelope. The next slide just shows the general layout of the site. Then I'll move. The next slide also will show us the proposed elevation, and this slide is telling us how the development has been designed, as proposed to be designed. The maximum height will be about approximately 10.46 meters. That will be its maximum height, and we'll have eaves height of about 6 meters. The applicant has proposed to have green walls within the elevation on all sides of the elevation of the building, just to make it blend with this backdrop. Just quickly show us a visual artistic representation of the site. This is how the site will look like if it's completed, when it's completed rather. Just quickly to touch upon the impact of the site in terms of amenity impact of the site. As we can see, there's a measurement of the separation, the nearest building, residential building. There are buildings located across the road on Upton Road, and the separation distance is about 42 meters away from the proposed building. In terms of the residential impact, any potential noise issue will be localized within the building enclosure, such that its impact to neighboring properties will be limited and not greater than the noise emanating from vehicle traveling the busy highways. And in terms of residential impact, the proposed development is not likely to give rise to an acceptable relationship, and we consider that the development will not cause or give rise to any harmful impact to the nearest residential buildings along Upton Park. And in terms of the character and appearance, the proposed building will have a maximum height of 10.46 meters. This will not appear prominent or dominant within the street scene, especially when traveling along the adjoining highways. The development will blend with its immediate backdrop, given the introduction of green walls within the elevation of the building. The application is generally well screened from the surrounding areas with existing vegetation and hedgerows along the perimeters. The proposed structures will be modest in height with a shallow pitch roofs. As such, they will integrate well within their context. While it will be partially visible from the street scene, it is not considered that they will cause significant harm to the character and appearance of the area. There will be a lot of space around the proposed building, and thus it is not considered that it will appear cramped within its setting. In addition, the proposed development is only seeking temporary use of the site, after which the land will be returned to its original form with no permanent harm caused to the character of the area. Just moved. It's just the next slide just showing us the existing vegetation along the perimeters of the road facing Upton Road. And lastly, on planning balance, the proposal will safeguard the strategic transport schemes. The proposed development is considered acceptable because it provides and improved community facilities and services available to create a vibrant and sustainable neighborhoods. The proposal, therefore, will support the aims of the council to promote sports facilities within the local area in accordance with developed PP26 of Pole Local Plan. Limited weight, we acknowledge there might be some potential harm as a result of the development, but this way is given a limited weight given to any identified harm that could arise as a result of the development proposed, given the the enormous public benefit that will arise from this development. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. And now we move on to the representations we've received, the public wishing to speak. First of all, we have a written statement from Gavin Parsons, who wishes to object to this application, and this will be read out by Ms. Holyoake.
Thank you. This site was supposedly evaluated as part of the BCP draft local plan as a potential gypsy and traveller site, GTS. BCP Council have not provided comprehensive evidence as to why this site could not be considered or developed in future as a GTS. I plan to raise and challenge BCP's site evaluation with respect to land south of A35 Upton Road with the planning inspector at the public hearing into the draft local plan. Any decision on potential future use or planning application for this site is therefore inappropriate at this time and should be deferred until due process has been followed and the planning inspector given time to evaluate the draft local plan and BCP's GTS site evaluations.
Thank you. And now we have Matt Allen on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, members. My name is Matt Allen. I'm a Chartered Town Planner, and I'm speaking in support of this application on behalf of the applicant's cross-court paddle. The proposal before you today seeks to create a new indoor paddle centre building consisting of 7 paddle courts with ancillary changing rooms, cafe bar, associated car parking. The scheme has only been brought to you today because the council own the land in question, and also because of this, the scheme is only seeking a temporary 3-year planning permission. I did think there were no letters of objection, but it seems there was one because I think they were repeated twice. In my response, I think that's possibly more of a political argument as opposed to the planning merits of the scheme before you. So I wish to continue to outline why we feel planning permission should be granted today in line with the officer's recommendation. Firstly, principle. Paddle tennis is the fastest growing sport in the UK. It's innovative, it's fun, flexible, and it played in groups of mixed ages and abilities because you don't need to be powerful or strong. It's not that kind of, it's less technical than tennis, which means it's ideal for family, friends to learn and play together. This new sporting facility will focus on the ever-growing sport of paddle tennis and will target the local community, as well as the thousands of local enthusiasts, one of them being myself, of the sport from right across Dorset. Given the highly accessible location of this site, the operators will reach out to local schools, clubs, youth groups and other local stakeholders to make sure local young people receive the utmost benefit from this facility. The LTA, the Lawn Tennis Association, who are the official governing body of tennis in Britain, aim to integrate paddle into the fabric of tennis in Britain. The LTA's paddle development plan explains one of the key strategies to growing the sport is to find new ways to grow participation, and paddle is seen as a fantastic entry to the sport, as well as being a great example of how less physically active members of the community are able to join in and participate in racket sports, promoting health and well-being. Having recently dealt with paddle courts at West Hants and Tennis Club and East Dorset Club, I know members are up to speed with the game of paddle tennis and know what's aware and of the benefits and the phenomenal popularity this sport has gained. As such, the scheme is in full accordance with PP26, the pool local plan, which supports new sports, recreation and community facilities and services, which help to create vibrant, sustainable neighbourhoods. Secondly, character appearance area. Due to the temporary nature of the scheme, the building design will be demountable building solution, which will be able to assist in a short production and construction. If approved today, the aim is to have this facility open for Christmas, just in time for the really bad weather. It also means that the building can be taken down and relocated at the end of the 3 years to another site and reused, considerably increasing its lifespan. The proposed temporary building does not require foundations works, which means that once removed, the land will return to its current state of a disused car park, which it has been for the last 2 years. Any lasting impact on the character of the surroundings. The construction of the building incorporates base plates and stakes to anchor the building in position. The only groundworks which will be required will be for the main sewer pipes for toilets, and that will be made good after the building's removal. As your officers noted, the site is generally well screened from the surrounding area. areas with vegetation, thus the scheme would not cause any harm to the character and appearance of the area. Thirdly, residential amenity. Unlike previous schemes you've considered at West Hants and East Dorset, the application site is more remote from sensitive receptors, with a busy road across the north and even busier dual carriageway down the south, such as residential and commercial premises are set further away. The nearest dwelling, as I mentioned, was nearer 50 metres away. The other big difference with this one, though, is that compared to the previous schemes, that this one's all the courts are inside with an insulated building, not outside, therefore further reducing the noise impact on neighbouring amenities. To regulate the temperature, the building will have air conditioning with a plant located on the southern side adjacent to the dual carriageway, furthest away from the sensitive receptor, full details of which can be agreed by condition. The environmental health officers, the council's environmental health officer, has raised no objection to the proposed scheme following the submission of an acoustic report. As such, it is firmly considered the proposed paddle courts will have no detrimental impact on the living conditions of neighbouring property. In conclusion, this scheme would deliver the first indoor paddle facility for Dorset and would support the aims of the council to promote sports facilities within the area. I hope you share your views of your professional consultees and your planning officers and recommend grant today in favour of the proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. There are no further people registered to speak, but Ms. Kobiaska would like to. Sorry, that's another name I've murdered today.
Thank you, Chair. Members, before you move to discussion or questions, I would like to draw your attention to the addendum sheet and the additional condition that has been requested by the Highways Authority in terms of the parking layout of the site. The condition requires the applicant to provide a parking layout prior to the first use of development to ensure 32 car parking bays, including 3 bays appropriate for disabled parking users, and that should be submitted for approval and then retained on site until the use is ceased for the duration of 3 years. So I just wanted to let you know that this is added. Thank you.
So, members, any questions, explanations, not opinions at this stage? Any information you need? Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I've got nothing against paddle sport at all. Quite like it. I'm a little bit concerned about a designated gypsy and traveller site within the local plan. I'd like to know about the process, about how that is changed. We are looking at, as a council, as trying to provide more spaces for the travelling community, as well as the emerging van life for community based on either choice or economic necessity. Our officers spend times chasing their tails all the time. You know, people rock up and they depending on their lifestyle choice or their economic situation, they set up, and the officers go out and assess for education or public health or whatever, and then they go to court and kind of move them on. And it's an ever increasing problem for the council. And I think we should be looking to provide spaces where people can be safe when they're on the move. And to take this away, that site away, I would think would have repercussions long term that we may regret. My second point is, and again, I'm not against paddle sport, but I'm naive within building regulations. So if something sits on a site for more than so many years, does that give it rights to remain or to re-establish it in a more permanent form? I don't know the law, but I would certainly like to know that. So that's my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get an answer to the second point in a minute. But on the first point, that is not, I mean, many people would agree with you, Councillor Cooper, but that is not an issue for us today. That is quite a separate issue, as was already been alluded to. On the second issue, could somebody answer the question about essentially squatters' rights in a way, isn't it?
Chair, I'll chip in on 2 points actually, and then I'll let the planning officer comment as necessary. First of all, partly an answer to the first point as well. I think, as I understand it, if you look at, I haven't got it before me, the conditions attached to this permission, it's actually a permission for a temporary consent. That's the recommendation before you for 3 years. So I guess in part the answer to the question that might have been posed, that even if through the local plan process there was an issue relating to whether the site should be allocated for gypsy travellers, because this is only a temporary consent, it wouldn't necessarily prevent that coming forward in due course once this temporary consent had expired. As my understanding, the officer can confirm as necessary. And the answer to the second question, this is a temporary consent, and therefore I think you'll find there are conditions which require the land to be, the use to cease and the land to be restored. And I haven't got the condition in front of me, but the officers can probably draw your attention to that. So that would require whatever's taken place on land to cease at that point. So that would be the answer to the second question, I think. But as I said, relevant officers can confirm.
We also have a planning officer wishing to answer that question as well.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, to answer the first part, the site is not allocated in the pool local plan, which is the current local plan, as the Gypsy and Travellers site. That would be under policy PP 15. I just wanted to read out subparagraph 665, which says the council has a duty to consider the housing needs of gypsies and travellers. The Gypsy and Traveller accommodation assessment identifies that there is no need for additional residential pitches in pool up to 2033. The council will continue to manage the permanent residential site at Manning's Heath to ensure any future need in pool is allocated within the site. I have spoken to the policy manager, planning policy manager, who's responsible for drafting local plan. He has confirmed that there is no current intention to allocate land at this site for the needs for Gypsy and Travellers. For now, obviously there's a different process in terms of the going through examination with the inspector, and whether this issue will be raised at that time during that process is completely separate from the discussion before us today. The site currently is allocated for park and ride under policy PP 36 only. In terms of the second issue, just as it was alluded in terms of conditions, so condition number 1 requires the site to be returned to the original state at the end of 3 years of its use. If the applicant would wish to apply again for the use of the site for another 3 years or any other period of time, that would have to be assessed under a separate planning application. Thank you.
Councillor Challoner, you had your hand up.
Reserve Chair, thank you. It's just a quick one with regards to consultations. When for this application and looking more broadly, because I think we'll have further applications coming through on paddle and possibly other sports facilities, do actually consult with the national governing body of a sport. So, for instance, the LTA last month launched their new 5-year strategy for paddle. They have a regional delivery team who are able to inform as to what they believe the requirement is for the number of courts in a given area, which might actually help to inform and shape decisions that we make within this committee. And I'm just wondering whether or not, if not now, should we be looking at actually including national governing bodies within that consultation process?
Can somebody help on this one? Either the case officer or one of the other officers with us?
Thank you. I'll just come in. Obviously, the case officer is more than happy to correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I understand, we have not consulted with Sports England.
Yes, we haven't consulted Sport England on the application, no.
No.
I thought it was the LTA more, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, while Sport England are an oversight body, actually this is, we should be looking sport specific, and the LTA will have specialist knowledge and data and insights that will actually help to inform. And at the moment, whilst paddle is a growing sport and there's a huge number of facilities available, you'll get to a point where I think there's a danger of oversupply, and actually we may not be shaping things in the right way as an authority to actually meet that demand. And I just think that they should be, if we can, part of that consultation process, and that should apply, because if we were looking at, for instance, a new football stadium, I can't believe we wouldn't talk to the county football or the football association.
I think possibly the difference is that this is only a temporary. I mean, I can't imagine anyone putting up a football stadium for a temporary period of 3 years.
Chair, could I just quickly come back to it? This is just a 3-year permission. Therefore, I understand that there was no consultations in terms of long-term use of the site. The other thing is there's clearly a demand for the sport and the need for those paddle courts in the area. That's why we've got the application before us. And I fully appreciate the issue of, knowing more about it as a bigger picture. But I think in this particular case, because it's a temporary permission and clearly, obviously, is a site which can be used for that for the 3 years, that's why it's before us without those further consultations right now.
Thank you. I've got two hands up. I've got Councillor Chapman-Law and then Councillor Gillett and then Councillor Salmon. Then Councillor Cooper. So a long, long list.
A couple of questions on walking and cycling access. Obviously, there's the shared path on the north side of Upton Road, and there I see that there's a drop curb with the crossing, the walking cycling crossing across from the eastbound carriageway across to the centre. But there's the actual entrance to the site itself doesn't appear to have a footpath or cycle access to it at all. And I think the plan only goes up to where the current gate is. Is there any details on that?
Could the case officer enlighten us on that one? Or I see we also have Mr. Smith from Transportation. Maybe it's up to him, over to him.
I can answer that if you wish, Chair.
Yes, please.
Yeah, condition 3 of the planning application requires them to supply a 2-metre wide footway around that bend and linking through to the pedestrian refuge crossing. It's outside the site, but that is highway land, and therefore it can be put on as a planning condition. And that requirement is that the 2-metre footpath link details are submitted, so it's built to the right standard, and then that's installed prior to the use of the building commencing. So we get that safety link for people crossing at that point. Hope that answers the question.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You happy, Councillor Chapman? Good. Councillor Gillett.
Yeah, so it was just going back to the point of consultation and demand. My thought with that was that almost certainly the applicant must have done something in that respect. I wonder if it was worth asking them if they'd had any feedback from any governing bodies or consultative committees.
I'm happy to bring the applicant spokesman in on this one.
It was just a comment that the Dorset LTA panel chairman has commented on the application in support of the scheme, just in response to your previous inquiry. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
So I don't know whether we've got anything in writing, but we have at least word of mouth that there is support from the local LTA. The next person was Councillor Cooper.
Just about the park and ride, really, I'd be interested in the process of that being changed, because we do need to manage the traffic, and we're talking about that all the time and encourage. I've got a meeting with Sunseeker on Friday about how we can encourage staff to use cycles, bicycles and walk, and Lush and companies like this. You know, we need to be working on that, and I just wondered what the repercussions of just leaving that site or regenerating it as a park and ride, because it's fully. And I just wonder what process that has gone through to say, well, it's not needed for the borough.
Reading the report, I can't give you which section of the report it is, but it's definitely talked about only having this application for a temporary period of 3 years, because if the park and ride were to be brought back into use as a park and ride, which as an aside, I hope it is, it would be unlikely to be able to be used as a park and ride until approximately 3 years from now. So this is filling in the gap, so to speak. But I'm trying to quote the report from memory. If I've got that wrong, perhaps somebody can put me right.
Chair, this is paragraph 51 and 52 of the report, which refer to what you were just saying.
Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, I wanted to talk about transport again. Actually, it's noted in the report that this is considered to be a sustainable location, and that's defined as being easily accessed by walking, cycling, or public transport. But there's not anything in the report specifically around the public transport side of things. So I didn't know if there was any further information the officers could give us about bus services to that place and regularity of buses, ease of getting buses from centres of population, because looking at the map, it is on the edge of things, this site. So it would be good to hear about that. Thanks.
I don't know whether this is another one for Mr. Smith or whether it's somebody else could answer on this one.
I can come back if you want, Chair. I don't particularly have I don't have the bus services that run in the area, but I think perhaps draw members' attention to the amount of paddle courts and the size of the building that we're talking about here. So it's 7 paddle courts. It's quite a limited amount of people here. There'll be quite a lot of car sharing going on, which is a very sustainable mode of transport. People travelling to the site together, that's something we considered. We are getting the enhanced footpath link, and there is a local community as well. I don't particularly have the bus service information though, so I apologise for that.
Thank you. From I do know that there is a bus or buses from Poole Town Centre towards Upton and through Creekmore. So there are buses. Frequency, I don't know about.
Chair, I just wanted to add to this. We've got 2 conditions promoting sustainable transport. So we've got condition 4, which will require 55 bicycle places on site to promote this mode of transport. The site is only restricted to 32 parking spaces, so that would obviously put additional requirement for public transport. And condition 7, which also requires 11 active electric vehicle charging points, which will promote sustainable transport as well. Thank you.
Councillor Clements, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I did. Thanks. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm a bit confused, I have to say, because I'm looking at paragraph 51 in the report, which says that the council plans to safeguard existing park and ride sites, and that the new local plan is likely to be adopted in 2025, which is very, very soon. But then further down in paragraph 62, it says it's acknowledged that the emerging draft BCP local plan can be given very limited weight at this stage. So is this purely based on the fact that this is a temporary site, but 3 years is still quite a long time if the local plan is going to be adopted in 25 and the consideration for the park and ride will be implemented in that plan? I'm confused. Can somebody give me some clarification or an explanation, please?
So who can help on this one?
Sorry, Chair, I didn't quite follow it. So perhaps I may be able to help, but I can just clarify. I apologise.
Right. So what I don't understand is that it says here that the draft BCP local plan has been given limited weight at this stage with this particular application. But the BCP plan is likely or expected to come into place in 2025, which is very soon. But this is a 3-year temporary application. So is it going to be, is the park and ride never ever expected to happen, or is it irrelevant? I just don't quite know.
So I think probably answer at least part of that. So I think the reason the emerging local plan is currently being given very limited weight is simply a recognition of the fact that it's at a fairly early stage in its process heading towards adoption. And as part of the assessment as to whether or not policies or representations or issues relating to local plan should be adopted or not, part of that process will be an inquiry that is yet to take place, or an examination that is yet to take place, and therefore what might come out of that examination and whether any policies or take their current form or adopt or amended going forward, modified going forward, remains an area of uncertainty. And I'm guessing, I don't know, I'm guessing that if very limited weight is being applied, it probably means there are various objections to relevant policies that might also result in them being changed, which an independent inspector will have to consider. So the very limited weight point is directed at the fact and recognition of the fact that what happens as a result of that, what happens to the emerging local plan remains very much uncertain. So it's very limited weight.
But a certain amount on timescale is given in paragraph 54. Which is basically saying what I quoted just now, that assuming the land is going to be used as a park and ride, it would basically take about 3 years to get all the consents and the financing and everything in place to open it, and therefore this is to fill it in the gap. So any further questions, or can we move to debate? Looks like no more questions, so debate the merits or otherwise of this proposal. Thank you, sir. Councillor McCormack.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst reading through this, I actually found very little issue with what was in the report, to be honest. And as it's a temporary permission, if there were any adverse effects from granting this application, they would expire within 3 years anyway. So with that said, I would like to propose to accept the officer recommendation to grant and look for a seconder.
And have we got a seconder?
I was going to say I was actually very impressed with the report. Thank the officers for that. It was I felt it was quite comprehensive. So I'm happy to say, but with the amendments and just that were and also I'm sure I'm right with that. And also in terms of the amendments, just make sure I've understood that correctly. There is going to be pedestrian crossing across the way. That's now as well. Brilliant. Okay.
Thank you. So, any further debate?
Sorry, can I just clarify? I think it was nodded by the person who moved that they would accept that.
Yeah. Yes.
But just for the
sorry,
record,
I should have
Chair.
pointed that out. Councillor Salmon.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just one thing that keeps coming through my mind about this. We're talking about it being temporary, and I understand that it's a temporary permission for 3 years, but we're talking about building a fairly substantial building, and presumably if it's successful and if the park and ride isn't imminent in 3 years' time, there would be a desire to keep it in place rather than pick it up and move it somewhere else, which would be expensive for the owners of the business. So and because this is a site that's allocated for park and ride, and there is an appetite within the local authority to put a park and ride on it, there are plans in place that's covered in the report. I'm just a little bit concerned that putting a building there will kind of lean things towards it remaining there, even though this is we're only granting it for 3 years. It being there will sort of be quite a heavy consideration for it maybe remaining there in 3 years' time. And I just don't know if there's anything we can do at this stage to say that should it end up staying for longer than 3 years, then to bear that risk in mind, I suppose, in terms of the longer term use of the site, because to lose a good park and ride scheme because it just hasn't quite happened yet seems not the right thing to be doing. So I understand we have to deal with the application in front of us, and that we probably can't say, yeah, in 3 years' time we can do this or add anything. But if there are any ways of putting conditions on around, one of the things that's in the report that struck me was that the sort of need for this building to comply with environmental policies, for example, around renewable energy, around biodiversity, have all been sort of waived because it's only going to be there for 3 years. And my concern is what happens if it ends up being there for longer. It would have been put there without any of those policies having been complied with. So I don't know if there's anything we can do, but that's the concern in my mind at this point.
Thank you. I think we've got an officer ready to answer that one.
Thank you. Chair, I just wanted to point out this is a temporary 3-year permission, and it's a temporary building that comes with restrictions in terms of achieving renewable energy thresholds, BREEAM, under policy PP 37, and the report explains how disproportionate that would be for the temporary building. In terms of mechanisms securing that this is not an extended permission, well, first of all, this is just for 3 years, and the condition is applied or suggested to be applied to therefore keep the building for 3 years and then remove it from the land and return the land to its original state. As the landowner, so BCP owns the land, we do have a control over the leasehold and what happens to the land. Obviously, in 3 years, we would assume that the new local plan will be adopted, and therefore we'll have a different situation in terms of putting weight on the new adopted policies and the need for the park and ride facility. If the applicant comes back with additional application seeking to retain the facility for another 2, 3, 5 years, depending on how much time they would wish to secure, we would be able to then assess it against the new local policies, the need for the park and ride, and control it that way, which may result in not granting further permissions for it. But I'm speculating at this stage.
Chair, again, for Councillor Salmon's benefit, she might find she reads condition 1, I think, is really the, as we mentioned before, that's the key condition here. And it does require both that the use ceases and within a month of the expiry of the permission, the building and all associated services shall be removed from the land. So it would potentially clear the site at that point. Doesn't mean an application can't come back again in due course, but of course then it has to go through the normal planning process and would be assessed and at that time as to depending on what the situation was.
Mr. Llewellyn, you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to quickly pick up on things about policies being waived at this stage. So, no, renewables is one example. So, if an application came back in 3 years' time for the retention of this building, there are mechanisms in order to secure renewable technologies that can be retrofitted. So, any application that was before you at that time, we would consider that against the relevant policies at that time. And we can make a decision, and the committee could make a decision at that time whether or not to secure renewable technologies as part of the retention of that building. So I think that if that gives you any kind of surety that that can be addressed in the future.
Councillor Challoner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in favour of the notion and the proposal that's before us in terms of additional paddle facilities in the area. One thing I'd like to add is that I did actually have a lengthy meeting with the LTA's head of paddle this week. There is a code of practice that they worked on with regards to the construction of paddle courts and facilities, because there are unfortunately some horror stories of not particularly great facilities that have been put up and have blown down, been damaged quite easily within the weather. And given that there is a code of practice that is in existence, and I was sad enough to look at the 42 pages of it yesterday, that it was put together by the Sports and Play Construction Association. Is there any way that we can, I don't know that we can condition it, but we can at least kind of suggest it or put it forward in some way that they adhere to that? And I think that's something we should again be looking at going forward, so that any facilities that come before us that we approve actually adhere to a certain industry standard that the LTA has worked hard to put together. I don't work for the LTA, I'm just concerned that we get it right.
Yeah, I take your point. Can anyone advise on that?
Okay, Chair, I'll just quickly answer that then. So that's not really something for us to control through the planning process. If there's codes of practice in terms of the sports associations that a developer would need to comply with, that's really an enforcement matter for that particular sports association. It's not something that we would control through planning. Obviously, there's building regs that they would need to potentially comply with.
Councillor Cooper.
Again, forgive my naivety, but with the kind of fiscal culture and the financial state of BCP in general and the future, that there is a move to sell off the family silver, as it were. And I just wondered what protections we can put in place for when we've got a building, which is basically a free market thing, people building it and providing a service. What protections can we put in place that if that sets a precedent of use, that BCP might make a move to sell off that piece of land in the future, because we are losing bits. I know you're probably shaking your head on this one, but I'm naive in this area, but it is a concern. These things
again, that is not an issue for us to consider at this meeting. But I don't know whether anyone wants to give more detailed and informed judgment on that.
Chair, no, I think, your comments well made, and I think I understand councillors' confusion in this, but from the planning point of view, they must differentiate between the council sitting here determining a planning application and the council as a landowner. And just as with any other landowner, this committee shouldn't be trying to instruct the landowner what to do with their land, particularly. So I think that's where you need to separate. You need to recognise you're perhaps wearing different hats in that respect.
I mean, should that ever be proposed, there will be plenty of other channels to make our voices heard. But today at Planning Committee on this planning application is not the one. So I don't see any more hands up. So we've had a motion proposed and seconded that we accept this application with the amended or with the amended condition or the additional condition. So I'll move to the vote now. Those in favour of accepting this application, please vote now. I don't know. I can see one hand not up.
So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you. So we are in a position to say thank you to everybody for taking part in this. Thank you to the case officer, and we should be shortly be moving on to case 6C, which is the club at Merrick Park. But I guess some people will want to leave us at this point. So we'll take a brief adjournment at this point while we resort ourselves and So welcome back to the resumed session of the Western Planning Committee of BCP Council, and we move on to item 6C, the club at Merritt Park, Central Drive, Bournemouth. Councillor Gillett has left us as he said he would because of his interest in the matter, and I will hand over to the presenting officer, Simon Gould.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So the next application members will be looking at this morning is the golf club at Merritt Park, located off Central Drive, here in central Bournemouth. The proposal before members is for an extension of an existing car park. Looking at the PowerPoint presentation, just a couple of points of reference. Obviously, Merritt Park is located in the heart of Bournemouth. Just by way of context, the clubhouse is located towards the southeastern corner of the park, the golf course, and that will become relevant when we move to a subsequent slide as a point of reference. Access to the golf club by cars is taken from Central Drive here, which comes off of Braidley Road. And as most people know, Braidley Road, as you head down to the south, you come past the council offices down to the town centre. So moving on to a sort of a more detailed look at a part of the golf complex. Here's the clubhouse again that was previously referenced, and obviously off to the top right hand corner you can see the access into the site from Central Drive, and it's a one-way gyratory, so you come in and then you go out via that route there. The existing car park is in this area here, and there's a more detailed plan we'll come on to look at shortly, showing the layout. And then this is the area where the car park extension would be located. Looking at some aerials, we're looking around the other way now, so we're kind of looking from the north to the south. Obviously, off to the left-hand side of this picture, you can see Central Drive and then the access and exit roads. You can't actually see them in this aerial photograph, but the overflow car parks, the current overflow car parks that are talked about in the report and that will be closed and returned to natural habitat, are located down amongst under the tree canopies there. Here you can see the existing car park, and then this area of grassland here is the area where the proposed car park extension would be located. This next slide just obviously gives you a slightly more detailed look at the car park. So again, this area here and to the south is the existing car park, and then the proposed car parking spaces along there. Just looking at a few sort of ground level photographs. So obviously stood in the existing car park, and the new car park would be in the area beyond that fence. That fence would obviously move out to the outer side of the new car park layout so as to afford protection of cars from wayward golf balls. And just moving around a bit, so beyond the existing car park, so the area of land that would be turned into a temporary car park, would be down here. And so obviously, yes, there would be some loss of trees, and that's obviously covered off in the case officer's report. And sort of just coming down to the other end and looking back, so we were previously stood up there with the last photo. So again, you can see the area of land that would be turned into car parking. And finally, I mentioned a few moments ago the existing overflow car parks that are accessed off of the existing driveway. Very informal layouts, nestled in amongst the trees. So if I just go back to probably there. So, Chair, the proposal, as outlined, is for the creation of a new overflow car park. There are currently approximately 122 car parking spaces within the golf complex at the moment. That would increase to 163, so a net gain of 41. The surface for the proposed car park is supposed to be permeable in the form of hogging. There's no lighting actually proposed. There was previously, but that's been removed from the scheme. The site is within the conservation area, and obviously there has been comment from the heritage officer raising concerns, objections to the scheme on the basis that an extension of a car park into the sort of sensitive park golf woodland setting would be harmful. That is considered to be less than substantial in terms of the level of harm. And you'll see as you read the plan and balance section of the case officer's report that that harm has been balanced against the benefits that would flow from the scheme, and ultimately the case officer has concluded that the public benefits that flow from the scheme would outweigh the harm. Obviously, you've got an existing car park already adjacent to the area where this extension to the car park would be created. So a car park does form part of the character of this part of the conservation area and the golf course. It is obviously mostly removed from the public realm. There are a number of conditions attached to the recommendation that deal with issues around the loss of the trees. The tree officer has obviously been consulted and supports the minimal loss of some low-grade trees. The arboricultural method statement is conditioned at condition 6, and that outlines replanting proposals. The grassland that would be built over does have an ecological value, and the ecologists have been consulted, and there's been extensive consultation. So essentially, the grassland which would be built over is acid grassland, so it has an ecological value. However, that loss will be compensated by the creation of new acid grasslands in the area, roughly where my cursor is, just to the sort of north of the words Merrick Park there. And as a combination of enhancements and other provisions, bat boxes, bird boxes, and the creation of that new acid grassland, overall, it's considered that there is an enhancement in terms of ecological values. Drainage has been mentioned, and again, there are conditions at numbers 2 and 3 of the officer's recommendation that seeks to ensure that the surface water drainage issues are dealt with. And so, Chair, overall, yes, there's an acknowledgement that creating an extension to the car park will have some impacts, certainly on the character and appearance of the conservation area and the golf course and its setting. But it's fairly minimal, it's less than substantial, and that the benefits that flow to providing better parking, arguably safer parking, because the existing overflow car parks are quite, certainly at certain times of the year or in the evening, are not that desirable because of how dark they are. And I think it's important that members note that this provision of an extension to create a new car park isn't because the club is growing in any way. There's no other development that's happening to enhance the facility. You know, they're not adding additional buildings, additional facilities. They're just trying to sort of rationalise their parking situation. Yes, there's a small increase in overall parking numbers, but actually they're just trying to sort of rationalise their parking layouts. And so on that basis, Chair, the officer's recommendation is grant.
Thank you very much. And I believe we have additional conditions, recommendations.
Yes, that's correct, Chair. There are there was an additional plan added through the addendum, and then there was an update to one of the conditions just to reflect the additional plan that had been submitted.
And also cycle storage.
Oh, yes. Yes, there's also an additional condition to require the provision of cycle storage.
Thank you. We have no objectors registered. We have Claire Bolton registered to speak on behalf of the applicant. So I'll ask her to come to the microphone now.
Good morning all. My name is Claire, I work for Chapman Lilly Planning and I'm acting on behalf of the agent's TCC operations. I would like to thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address the committee today. I would also like to thank the case officer for providing a diligent and comprehensive report and for working proactively with us during the course of the application. Thank you also to the officer presenting on their behalf. The scheme worthy of recommendation for approval has been arrived at through an iterative process involving proactive discussions, including an in-person meeting with the case officer on site. As officers have already outlined, the proposal is for an existing main car park for Merrick Park that serves the club and the local community. I wish to emphasise the need for this increase in parking, not only for the members of the club, but for the residents of Bournemouth and the wider BCP area. The public car parking at Merrick Park has remained unchanged since 1900, whilst the population of Bournemouth has grown by roughly 2,250%. As a result, the club has seen an incredible growth in the number of members and staff over the recent years, which has led to overcrowding and dangerous parking in the existing car parks. There have also been a series of unfortunate incidences involving antisocial behaviour. Merrick Park has been a cherished recreational space for over a century, with the golf club and leisure facilities playing a vital role in the community's health and well-being. The current parking situation is hindering access and enjoyment for the local residents, members of the club and the wider BCP area. It is considered this proposal is not merely about expanding a car park for club members, but represents a significant public benefit and encourages broader use of the park as a whole. We firmly believe that these benefits strongly outweigh any potential harm to the conservation area. Moreover, it is worth noting that when consent was granted for the leisure centre in 2000, a larger car park similar to what we are proposing now was approved. While circumstances may have changed, the historical context demonstrates that such an expansion was clearly previously deemed acceptable within the conservation area. The project team has carefully considered the proposal's impact on the conservation area, and the design has been formed accordingly, such as proposing echelon parking to reduce the depth of the car park, which was suggested by the case officer. The proposal sits comfortably within the car park, expanding on an existing area of hard standing with natural materials such as hogging, and not affecting the existing layout of the golf course. Indeed, as reaffirmed by the highway officer, sustainable transport can be challenging and inconvenient for members and the local public. Thus, increased parking is required to discourage the existing unsafe standards. The application was submitted prior to the requirement of biodiversity net gain, but our ecologist works hand in hand with the biodiversity officer at Dorset Council and the Dorset Wildlife Trust to ensure ecological concerns are considered. The proposal results in a betterment over the existing conditions by reinstating the lower car parks that are located at the bottom of an unlit steep hill in an unsafe and unsuitable location. The proposal also incorporates ecological enhancements such as bat and bird boxes, replacement hedgerow planting, a woodland restoration management plan, and the planting of replacement grassland, among others. I trust you are able to support your case officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no one else registered to speak, so I can open up to questions. Councillor Chapman-Law.
Yeah, a quick question on the condition around the cycle parking. It's a bit vague. So I'd like to see something a little bit more solid, like actually complying with the parking SPD, rather than just we'll just throw in a couple of Sheffield stands or something similar. It just feels a bit vague.
Mr. Gall, can you help out on this?
Yes, I mean, obviously there's the condition that the councillor refers to is in the addendum. It doesn't actually set out a specific number of spaces, but if members were concerned that the wording currently was a bit vague, then we could add some wording into that to cross-reference the parking SPD.
Thank you. I think when we come on to debate, that will be an issue we want to look at. I had a forest of hands and I haven't made a mental note. Councillor Adams.
Sorry, it's just to idiot-proof it for me. There's no, just to be, sorry, it's just I'm really sure in my head. There's no way they can proceed with the main car park expansion without doing returning the other one back to nature, is there? Because obviously this is in the plans, but I just wanted to make sure in my head that they have to do both bits, don't they, as part of the application? Because otherwise you'd end up with the other side car park that's used for truck dealing and dogging of an evening, rather than the sort of nice one that is being expanded.
Mr. Gould, can you?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I'll just have a quick look at the conditions to see if there's anything specifically in them at the moment that would cover that. I mean, it doesn't look as though there's any specific wording at the moment. So again, if members were concerned about them sort of almost like part implementing their permission, if it was granted and not returning the existing overflow car parks to natural, then I would suggest some supplementary wording to condition 4 that would require details of timings and timetables and how they're going to return those existing car parks back to natural habitat.
So again, this is something we'll look at in the debate. Okay, Councillor Dow.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Cameron. I was going to ask exactly the same question about it's very big. It says return to natural habitat for that overflow car park, and I would like to see some steps in there about what that's going to mean. Is it new trees? Is it replacement acid grass? Those kind of things.
That we'll come on to that in the debate. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's probably quite a difficult question to answer, but I was just wondering roughly if there's a calculation of how many cars are parked informally in the overflow car park on a regular basis.
The answer to that is fairly simple. No, because it's very informal. It depends on how someone parks one car, which then has a ripple effect. So so it's difficult to put an exact figure on that. Yeah.
Councillor Salmon.
Thank you. I wanted just to clarify for my understanding about the main car park that we're talking about, the one that's going to get that they're looking to expand. Is it open to the public, that car park, or is it only for the club use of the club? That I'm not quite clear.
Good.
I think it's a private club. I think you have to be a member. Oh. Okay. Stand corrected.
When I visited, I certainly got the impression it was open to the public. Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay, we move on to debate then. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I know this car park reasonably well, although not most recently, I have to say. My son used to play rugby there about 20 years ago. And even then, it was horrendous. It was, at the very, very least, dangerous, the overflow car parking, particularly when children were in the area. It was hazardous. It was very, very problematic. It caused problems between parents. It caused problems with children running around. It was just a terribly awful, dangerous situation. I also am concerned about the comment regarding safeguarding of the staff, because if they're having to park in an unsafe, unlit area, that is absolutely not ideal. So yeah, I'm currently in support of this application.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Adams and Councillor Sam.
Yeah, I'm also supportive of the application. I agree completely with the comments. Again, I would like that subject to a condition that there is a firm agreed plan with the head of planning services for the return of the overflow car park to nature. Because I just want to make sure that they're not just expanding the car park and then letting the dingy, crime-ridden side park. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we can ask the officers to be working on wording for that to present to us when we come to the vote. Councillor Salmon. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to make a motion and make a move? Councillor Adams.
To approve it subject to the wording that those very clever gentlemen in the corner made.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept. Oh, Councillor Dower, seconded, and Councillor Chapman.
Just on that parking SPD, that's going to be hard enough as well, is it?
If we want it to be, it will be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
If they're going to increase the number of parking, they also need to comply with the parking SPD as a whole, not just in terms of the cars and the electric vehicle charging and stuff like that. It also has to be the active travel, bike storage and that sort of stuff as well.
Thank you. And so we're looking for additional wording or clarification before we actually vote.
I'm in some difficulty because I no longer have a computer in front of me. shared it with a colleague. I think in practical terms, Chair, and I'm just going to run through my current understanding, and members, and particularly the people who moved in second, can clarify. I think what they want is wording changes, and I'm going to look on the cycle parking, on the sorry,
on the return of the informal
habit. So is that condition 4 generally, or?
Yeah, so condition 4 of the report deals with landscaping. We could look at altering some of the wording in that to include, it has little a's, little b's, little c's. So we could add another little, whatever relevant letter it would be, to include details of a scheme to be submitted for approval regarding the return of the existing overflow car parks to natural habitat.
Can I make a suggestion? Already in little e, we've got programme of implementation. That could be just expanded, could it not, to say including the return of the informal car parks to their natural condition?
It could do, or whether it's better to just have it under its own, because obviously the wording programme of implementation would obviously apply to all the other little letters above it. So my preference would be to have it as E and then move E to F, because then F catches all.
So we.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if
I think that committee members will want to be sure that this is included before they vote.
So I think the choices are we'll have to pause while we come up with some wording. The alternative is members could make the approval subject to power being delegated to the head of, I'm not sure his title now, but I'll say head of planning, head of operations to.
What about in consultation with the chair?
Yep, that's fine, Chair. So
that we've got
power delegated to the head of planning, or whatever he's got, head of planning operations, in consultation with the chair to revise conditions 4 and
the cycle parking condition, which doesn't have a number because it's in the addendum.
And cycle parking condition as recommended to deal with the issues of ensuring habitat restoration and also appropriate cycle parking provision. I think that
was exactly what I had in my head.
Before we proceed, the spokesman for the applicant has got her hand up, so if she could come back to the microphone, she may be able to help out on this one.
Sorry, I just appreciate the officer presenting isn't the one we dealt with previously. One of the condition refers to the proposed ecological enhancements measures and the document that we submitted. Within that document, we do specify that we are returning those bottom car parks to fallow. They're also included in the blue line, which was the idea of showing that we were returning them to fallow. And in relation to cycle parking, we've got a barrel bike scheme being approved, being orchestrated, if you like, at the park, but I appreciate that doesn't clarify numbers, so happy for that to be dealt with as needed.
So is that standalone, or will there also be stands for people to bring their own bicycle?
Both. So there'll be barrel bikes, but the case officer wanted obviously stands for private use, so Sheffield stands are conditioned, but numbers aren't specified. Appreciate that.
Does that satisfy?
Yeah, I don't think it does satisfy. Sorry, I'm now acting as a spokesman for 3 people who are speaking all around me. But Chair, I think the position is officers can't at this moment find an ecological condition on the report. So there may be a third matter that may need to be resolved. And so, Chair, I think we're probably not going to sort this sitting here at this moment. So again, I think probably we can extend the recommendation and the powers be delegated to the relevant officer head and in consultation with yourself to revisit the cycle condition to make sure it provides for appropriate number of cycle parking provision, to revisit condition 4 to address the issues of landscaping and securing habitat, and to check the position regarding the ecological situation and, if necessary, add a condition to cover that as well. I think that's about it. If the mover and seconder are prepared to agree to all those.
Councillor Dow's got her hand up.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that it's really clear that within those conditions, there's a timeline and a plan for returning that second overflow car park to natural habitat or natural something.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the intention that we're setting out. That we will weave some wording into those conditions to require details to be submitted of returning those overflow car parks to natural habitat. That will include details of what those works are going to be and when.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Adams, do you want to add anything?
I'm very happy to proceed on that basis, and I'll be watching you like a hawk to make sure when the decision notice comes through.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded. We have now got assurances from the officers that it will be subject to these additional clarifications, conditions, as it works out, in consultation with me on your behalf. So responsibility on me to make sure it's done. To do with cycle parking, return of the overflow car parks, the two of them, to natural state. So on that basis, can we vote, and those who are in favour of accepting this application with that additional information and conditions and amendments, will you vote now, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So I make it that's unanimous. So thank you very much, everybody. And that closes